Welcome to Fixate Today Book Club, where we obsess about books and want to share our fixations with you. Check out our podcast, Fixate Today Gone Tomorrow, and for more content, browse through the rest of our channel, Fixate Today Gray Matters. Hey everyone, welcome back. We are continuing to read While Idaho Slept by Reuben Appleman. And we have officially made it to part 2. So we are going to open up on chapter 7.
And we are going to have to try to push a little harder, to be a little quicker. Not so much chatting because we are moving slower.
Took us a long time to get through chapter 1.
We need to cover some ground.
Or part 1, rather. All right. Chapter 7. Corporal Brett Payne of the Moscow Police Department was 33 years old and looked like many seasoned military vets from North Idaho, with a fit build and smoothly shaved head.
So this, it was kind of hard to keep track of names.
Yeah, this part was tricky for me.
Yeah, this is a little hard. So, with all the different, authorities. So
Corporal Payne.
Brett.
So he was a rookie. He had never seen a homicide before. But he's an army guy, so he's, kind of built for a position like this. He was the one who got a call on November 13th at 4 p.m. with instructions to secure a crime scene and begin processing the scene.
Yeah, he would later learn that the murder had taken place a full 12 hours earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this strange thing that was unique about the call on the actual murder not happening for several hours.
Yeah.
And I guess them it being a question, what happened?
Yeah. What caused the delay in the call? We learned that the 911 call hadn't even come from Dylan and Bethany, but was on Dylan's phone, but had been placed by another friend named Hunter Johnson, who was the best friend of Ethan. Hunter was a presence all the time in the house, it seems like. He's just another one of the people who was coming and going all the time, but he was a frequent person there, and I think that's evident as he was there at noon on that Sunday. It wasn't 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. He was went to the house
Right
that day.
So at this point, none of this was really making sense. To police at first, so they were kind of just having to orient themselves to what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And why these with the time frame. By the time he arrived, Officer Payne, there was a lot of the neighbors, everyone had started gathering, and Dylan and Bethany, the two who had survived, had already been removed from the immediate area.
Mm-hmm.
And Payne's kind of the one who starts, he's guiding, he's leading the investigation.
Yeah.
Right? So he's kind of guiding things through the house.
At this point, he's in charge of this. At this point, the Idaho State Police Forensic Services team was already there as well, and different members of the Moscow PD were, it says, canvassing for potential witnesses.
And this is one of the hardest lines for me to read in the book, but the smell of death was unmistakable and already strong.
Yeah.
Intimate.
So next we meet Officer Corbin Smith, who was one of the responding officers. He was also a Marine Corps vet, and he had actually attended the University of Idaho before becoming a police officer. So he is the one who leads Corporal Payne through the scene.
They first see Xana's body outside of her bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
They can see a female body on the floor just outside the door. And they just say body was positioned unnaturally, which is hard to read.
Yeah.
And then further inside the room, they found the body of what they say is a large male victim, obviously Ethan. And that's where there was blood in the room that was actually leaking through the exterior of the home because there
Mhm.
was, so much.
From there, Payne leads Smith up to the 3rd floor where, um, they see Kaylee and Maddie. It says when responding officers had first arrived a few hours earlier, the Golden Doodle Murphy had been found shut inside Kaylee's bedroom on the west side of the 3rd floor, spared by whoever committed the murders. So he was in Kaylee's room. So they were in Maddie's room.
Yeah, and they do say inside Maddie's room, on the 3rd floor, both Kaylee and Maddie's bodies were laying on Maddie's bed together,
Yeah.
deceased.
Yeah.
And it just says the stab wounds that ended their lives were grotesque.
And
So right away, they find like the piece of major evidence,
yeah.
um, which
They
is the sheath of the knife had been left beside the bed upstairs.
Yeah. So the sheath has like the US Marine Corps insignia, and uh I just think that's, I don't know, do you think Koberger made himself, well, he wanted to be a police officer in law enforcement, but do you think that was just the sheath he got with the knife, or was that like, I could
I
be a
think this knife,
military
they're
guy?
like, I think these are like this knife is just like one of the strongest, biggest knives there is, and it's like I don't know, like it's what the Marines or
Okay. Yeah, it says a
use.
military blade.
And it's called a K-bar was the
Yeah.
type of knife. And he said that like Payne recognized immediately that the evidence of the sheath being left there was unusually fortuitous.
Mhm.
Homicide investigators didn't often get such a substance left at the scene. Um, and as we'll go on, I mean, Kohlberger was a criminology student and had this was very well planned out, and he had covered his tracks in a lot of ways. So leaving this sheath was just such a huge mistake, and
Yeah.
almost surprising that with everything else he had done correctly that he would have made such a let this happen.
Yeah.
But you pointed out that when we were talking earlier, um, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so part of my neurodivergence is like I forget stuff, and especially when it's like a higher pressure kind of time. um I will, like, I'm notorious for grabbing my car keys, frantically trying to get my family out the door and putting the keys down somewhere, and then I'm like, you can't leave, I can't find my keys. um And the other thing I do is if I get really, really focused into something I'm doing, I have made mistakes like that. Like, not like that. I've made mistakes of like, I'm, I did it with my notebook I'm taking notes for. Like, I will sit down and be like, I don't know where I put my notebook. Like, I was so focused on whatever else was happening. Like, I just don't have it. Or kind of the opposite. I'll get somewhere and be like, I never grabbed this thing I needed because I was so kind of like stressed out by whatever was happening. So I can see it as totally in the chaos that he had just created. Of he's so focused on the plan. I really think he was so focused on the plan is this. The next step in the plan is this. The sheath wasn't part of the plan. It was
Mhm.
just, yeah, it was
You
just
just hadn't
like,
thought of that?
right. I think it didn't occur to him to grab the sheet. I think he was so focused on like, this is the next
Yeah.
step. I do this, that it was like,
And
I
he
never
didn't
grabbed.
prepare I bet he didn't think ahead. Thinking I mean, such a think ahead about it.
Yeah. So I really think that it was just a straight mistake of he was so focused on, I did this part, next is this part. I did this part, next is this part.
They do describe one of the victims as, almost being overkilled, and they
Mhm.
said, that often implied that that person was, a specific victim
Yeah,
that was being targeted.
yeah, and I think since the book was published, we have learned that I don't think we've learned which one, but one of the 2 was the target. I've heard both and different evidence for why it was Kaylee or why Maddie was the target, but it was certainly like one of them was we know it was the main target.
All right, so that was a quick one, so let's move on to chapter 8.
Chief of Police James Fry had lived in Moscow and its environs for longer than most, although he wasn't born and raised, as people from this small town often proudly declared of themselves. North Idaho was in his blood after 35 years.
So he had been in North Idaho for 35 years, and he had studied at the University of Idaho, so, he, this was really personal to him.
Yeah.
So after he got his bachelor's degree in criminal justice, he stayed, and he had been, a reservist, starting in 1993 and became, full-time 2 years later.
He met his wife at the University of Idaho. Um, they had 4 kids together. They stayed in North Idaho. Um, yeah, this had become home. He'd served a lot of. I thought this was interesting. He served different roles within the same police department, which I actually think is kind of great to have
Yeah,
all the
he had
experience.
rotated through. Yeah, yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
and then in 2016, he was appointed chief of police,
yep.
um,
Um,
and had actually been sent for like special elite training, like FBI training.
Smallish town, insular town, but they had somebody very talented and smart as the chief of police. Um, and I think, we kind of said a lot of things had to line up for things to happen how they did. I think having Fry as the chief of police is why this went kind of quickly. He knew enough what to do and what not to do and when to call for help. People above him who had more, I think he played this very, very well.
Although we'll see, he kind of gets a lot of flack.
Yeah,
Yeah. But they did say that this case was personal to Fry
yeah.
because it was so close to home. And so by the time he gets there and does his walkthrough, like everything's, gosh, a lot's already been done. So the
Hmm.
investigators were already scanning for tire tracks, um, taking swabs of windowsills, canvassing the neighbors. Um, the house was it was a very bloody, brutal
Hmm.
scene.
Yeah.
All of it.
They do say pretty quickly that it appeared um, none of the victims had been restrained, but also confirm again pretty quickly with the scene and then later in the autopsies that there was no sign of sexual assault, which I think to them would probably was also a pretty big clue that this was fast.
So the book kind of goes back through like the layout of this house and how it was they were used to having a lot. It was a party house. They were used to having a
Hmm.
lot of people there. They left the doors unlocked. So we kind of do hear a lot about that.
Yeah.
Chief Fry, though, immediately brings in the Idaho State Police and the FBI. So they
Yeah.
knew this was something big.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a really you hear so many cases that like police departments in different counties wouldn't even share information because they wanted the glory of like solving the case. And it's so refreshing to be like, this is bigger than what I can do. And hearing somebody recognizing that and saying we need more help. So Dylan and Bethany immediately um, were immediately kind of taken in. It does say that they were being taken good care of by Fry's detectives, which to me suggests that they also weren't suspects right off the bat.
I think it's important, though, like with Fry to remember. I think he was, a very talented officer, but this is a small town. They're not used of they're not ready for the press
Mhm.
conferences that are going to be asked of them. It's just overwhelming. They've never had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um, and and that becomes a challenge for Chief Fry.
Yeah, because it's Dylan and Bethany are giving information that has to be kept close, that can't be released. So what will ultimately happen is that the media will accuse him of withholding things when he is, but it's prudent to the investigation that these certain things get out or not get out. So it becomes like a big old tightrope of giving the media enough while actively being like, there's stuff I can't tell you, and you just have to deal with that.
And that kind of becomes an ongoing battle of sorts.
Yeah. Excuse me. All right, chapter 9. In the Moscow City conference room, lit from overhead by recessed halogen lamps, Chief Fry stood in front of a podium with a single microphone during the presser. He was flanked by his staff, his prosecutor, an Idaho State Police colonel, and several members of the University of Idaho's upper administrative staff, including its president, Scott Green. Quote, I am going to be reading from my notes today, Fry said, because I want the information you receive to be extremely accurate.
So we can see how that's going to play a big piece in this. Um, of course, already like rumors started about neighbors and creepy neighbors and like previous boyfriends and
Mm-hmm.
things along that line for like who could have been involved. So and
Yeah.
he um, made sure Chief Fry made sure right from the start that there was little room for speculation
Yeah.
about. He kind of tried to shut that down.
He started by saying the facts of the case that we know right now. It's very clear. There's no misunderstanding. These are the facts that we know now. He says, the facts of the case that we know right now, Chief Fry started, then paused to collect himself before reciting a laundry list of items he believed could be vouched for. We know that these homicides occurred in the early morning hours of Sunday, November 13th. Around noon, Moscow officers received a call of an unconscious person. Officers discovered the bodies of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Goncalves inside the residence on King Road. The four were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time. There were no sign of forced entry into the residence. Investigators are continuing to collect evidence at the scene. Investigators are working to develop a timeline of relevant events. Autopsies are taking place today on all the victims so we can continue to gather evidence and solve the crime. Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. Fry sounded short of breath, the pain of what he'd just read from his notes. An isolated, targeted attack, thumping in his chest as the press corps leaned forward off their seats. We do not have a suspect at this time, he continued, and that individual is still out there. We cannot say that there is no threat to the community. And as we have stated, please stay vigilant, report any suspicious activity, and be aware of your surroundings at all times. Again, his breath was uneven.
So he does bring in then he introduces the University of Idaho president,
Mm-hmm.
Scott Green, who plays a pretty big role in this.
Yeah.
Um, and he's very emotional. He says, first, my deepest condolences to the families. And they said he was fighting back tears, his head bowed. He was emotional. He was fully crying. He was having a hard time even proceeding with his the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he felt like the students had been entrusted to his care, um, almost in a paternal way.
He finishes by saying, we just want justice for these victims. So at this time, outside of the room, life has to continue on. But the campus was basically abandoned. Students are now locking their doors. They don't want to leave. Um, they are ordering food in. They're not leaving to get food. And this just is like, it's heartbreaking, but kind of cool that this is a thing they could do. Was they would delivered directly to their homes by the new campus robots in the quote Starship fleet. So little robots are bringing their DoorDash because nobody wants to leave. And they're just, it says, streaming shows and waiting to go home for Thanksgiving break.
Yes. So they don't know at this point if there's an ongoing threat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, yeah, a lot of students left. I guess the timing of Thanksgiving break probably worked out because a lot of students left early, and
Yeah. And a lot of the professors were just like, we're not having any more homework or tests, just go home. Um, and I appreciate that the university recognized they had to do that.
yeah. Okay,
All right.
quickie,
Yeah.
chapter 10.
Behind the scenes, investigators were hoping their biggest clue, the K-bar knife sheath left beside Maddie Mogan's body, might lead to them to the perpetrator. With its 6-inch blade and the model 1217 leather sheath they'd found. Sifting through the volumes of documents received in return would take valuable manpower, but regional buyers could be identified quickly.
It goes on to say that this particular K bar had become popular in military combat, and it's because it was usually stacked leather washer grip allowed for greater control when the hands were perspiring or otherwise wet. Rainwater or blood might cause grip slippage on lesser knives.
To me, that says like he also researched the knife
Hmm.
he wanted to
Yeah.
use. So the K-bar knife sheath was sent to have be analyzed for any DNA. Um, they also discovered a latent shoe print at Dylan's bedroom door.
Now, I don't exactly understand that. So is it like a bloody shoe print, or how would they be able to identify that particular shoe from? I mean, I've been talking about so many people coming and going from this house. I didn't really understand how they could zero in on this one particular.
She had already told investigators that he had walked by her, so I wonder if because it says they'd found it using amid, amido black, a staining dye that reacts with difficult to see blood proteins, turning them dark blue and enhancing visibility. The shoe print, not entirely obvious to the untrained eye, but made clear after processing, showed a diamond shaped pattern facing the direction the perp had walked when exiting the house. They were like, let's see what we could find for shoe prints in front of her door because we know he took this route, maybe.
Yeah. And so he must not have been wearing booties,
No.
which a little bit would have, yeah, thought he might have. But so they knew his shoe size. So one thing that really shocked me is they talked about how the DNA from the knife sheath, like they just found like one bit of it, like on the
Yeah.
snap, right?
Hmm.
That's amazing to me that they can isolate and just use such a tiny amount of the DNA.
Yeah.
Um, but even with the DNA, if you do a DNA search through all the databases and it's a person who's never committed a crime, it's
They're not in the system.
right, which in this case he had not been. So then, I mean, going back to the social media, right? So the victims,
Hmm.
Google, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Snapchat, iClouds were immediately examined with the help of the FBI. Their banking, credit card, Venmo, PayPal, and point of sale records were also retrieved. No digital stone that the police could reasonably suspect might offer leads was left unturned.
Yeah. And it was forensic detective Lawrence Mowry who led the what was called digital data retrieval. So he was in charge of like getting the warrants for all of to access all of those things, and then I believe analyzing it all as well.
The FBI even set up a trailer in a gated parking lot of the police department, and the feds actually had allocated as much manpower as Chief Fry needed to help in the massive search through the massive amounts of information coming in because they were getting
Mhm.
lots and lots of tips and calls.
Yeah. I didn't realize this. I thought it was interesting that Detective Mowry had sent in a warrant to obtain uh, Kaylee's dating information on Tinder. Um, she was still on Tinder, even though she and her boyfriend Jack were back and forth. Um, but I thought it was interesting, and it's possible the others didn't have a Tinder account, but they only um, initially only accessed Kaylee's Tinder account. After that, I guess Maddie did have a Tinder account, and they um, eventually sent in a warrant for that as well.
It seems like a very logical place to consider. I didn't like eh, I didn't like the word use. Kaylee had technically been a free agent at the
Yeah, I
time of her
know.
murder. Did love that, but
Didn't love that. Um, they also discovered that Xana had ordered the DoorDash, so they do a warrant for any information related to the house via DoorDash, and then to look into the drivers that may have been there. They are also examining the security footage from neighbors and businesses directly around an area, like frame by frame. Um, at Through the security footage at 4:17 a.m., somebody's camera picked up barking, whimpering, and a thud. And Dylan's statement confirmed that as well, that was what she heard at that time.
The security camera on that neighboring house picked up sounds, including what police described in charging papers as distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. Here are those sounds. A dog began to bark, as if something was wrong.
and if you actually take a look, I'm going to pop up the house where the that particular surveillance came from is very close. Because at first I thought, I was kind of surprised for surveillance camera could pick up that much detail,
Me too.
especially when you hear. But yeah, it was really, really, really nearby. So,
Yeah.
so now they're like just trying to nail down the exact time of the homicides. So at this
Um,
point, they have the
thank you.
like the knife sheath, the
Hmm.
footprint. They have narrowed down the time of the murders, and then a partial description of a man in a mask from Dylan's account.
So Colonel Payne started reviewing some of the footage of the neighborhood, and he sees the white sedan making an initial pass at 3:29 a.m. in front of the house. Then he notices over the next 30 minutes the car drives by two more times. Um, it returned for a fourth time at 4:04 a.m. Um, just as the DoorDash driver left. The sedan stopped briefly in front of the house, and then it says after a series of awkward movements, as if it had been attempting to park, continued slowly off camera and was not seen again for 16 minutes. And then at 4:20, the sedan is shown departing the neighborhood at a high rate of speed.
So when it says it was the awkward movements when they was as if it was attempting to park, do you think it was trying attempting to park like in the parking area of the home, or awkward movements when it was because it did park up on the hill where that apartment complex was. I wasn't sure where
Yeah, I wonder if he
if
was trying to park there at first, maybe. I
yeah, I
don't
don't
know.
know. So there was no front license plate displayed, and the rear plate was obscured by darkness. So, nonetheless, this was a huge break for the
Yeah.
police when they figured this out.
All right. Should we wrap up there for this time, this episode?
Yeah, I think now would be good.
All
So
right.
we'll continue on a couple days with chapter 11.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll see you again.
Bye.